non-Spanish speakers in the room. I'll try to speak as slowly as possible. If you don't understand something, just stop me, and I can translate to Spanish or talk a bit slowly. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Hernani. I'm the technical team lead for the consulting team of Appia in Europe. I'm originally from Portugal, and I do many things with Drupal. Most of the times when I work with Drupal, I work as an architect. And as an architect in Appia, we basically prepare different technical solutions for clients, for projects in the different phases. So we typically are involved since the discovery, since when the project is starting, to when we are specifying the solution, designing the solution, then during the development and during the deployment. So if anyone would like to join us, we are always looking for people, so talk with me. And today I wanted to talk to you about a character that we always have in our project. And sometimes we forget about it as developers or as architects, which is the content editor. And they are getting more and more demanding. Like in 2015, and people are expecting systems to be as flexible as possible and as easy to use as possible as well. So what is a typical demanding content editor? So he wants to control pretty much all the details, all the content appears. So content is king for him, and he wants to control as much as possible. And he wants also to control as much as possible the layout, which is not very much the way that we used to think sites a couple of years ago. This type of demanding content editors, they are very popular in environments where the content is king. So if you think about media like a TV or a television or a newspaper or a magazine where you need to publish content every day, and if you don't publish content and if you don't publish good content, then no one goes to your site, or entertainment or corporate websites. These are the places where people ask for more flexibility. And the other part that is interesting about the content editor is that he's not very tech savvy. He doesn't know Drupal, he doesn't know a lot about technology, but he knows it on his own way. So if he's able to do something, even if it's not the correct way of doing it, if you as a site builder were not expecting him to do something, he'll do it anyway. Because you'll find always a way. So this is the typical demands. So change website look and feel, reuse content everywhere, review, and preview and approve content. And then sometimes readapt the site for special events. So if you look for a newspaper, typically they want to be able, whenever there is a big event, they want to repose the homepage and create almost like a special homepage where all the news from that event appears and they can publish things very fast. And also the CMS should be easy to understand and fast to execute. What is our problem? The problem is that Drupal by itself has a couple of disconnections. So the first disconnection is there's a disconnection between content and layout. The way that you create content and the way that you create layout is a bit different. So you cannot create content and preview it right away and have a complete vision of what is happening. At the same time, there is a disconnection between site building and content edition. So the way that you build your site typically is not the same way as people are going to enter content and are going to change different sections. And then you used to have this mantra or this saying, and that in Drupal you create the content first and then somehow it's going to appear somewhere. So you first create your nodes and then with the view they're going to appear somewhere. Or you first create your nodes and then they're going to appear in the block somewhere if you tag them in a special way. So that's kind of hard to position to a content editor that is just expecting to just go to a page, click the edit button, change some stuff, and it all appears automatically in the same way that it came from. And then we have another problem, which is there's a lack of the revisioning system. It's present in the nodes, and you can do a very good job the way that you can do the workflow on the nodes. But at the same time, it's hard to do it in other areas like menus or taxonomies or the layout for the nodes. So that's the big problem. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about different scenarios and different tools that you can use to solve those scenarios. And I always have a rule in my career, and that's what I always tell to my clients. The best tool is typically the one that you know how to use. So it doesn't matter if you have something very fancy and very interesting. If you don't know how to use it, it doesn't matter. Use your old tool. It's probably the best one that you have. So let's start with the the third problem, so the content structure. So the way that you structure your content in order to adapt to what the content editors are asking. So imagine a page like this. So that's a recipe page, right? So you have a website, you are creating recipes, and in this case is caramel cream, and you need to have ingredients, you have images, and then each paragraph is almost different from the other one. The ones have videos, the other ones have text, the other ones have large images. You could have maps, you could have a bunch of stuff. So if you think the way that you can create a page like this, and it's kind of what content editors want, they want to create pages, it's kind of, there are different ways of doing it. So first option, option A, free-form HTML. Second option, you create your content in a way that everything that belongs to your content belongs to that content structure. So let's say you create a node, and all of the fields have all the information that you need, and then they appear styled somewhere. Third option, you create all the different parts separately, and then you integrated it with a reference in your node. And the last option is your node just has some text, and then you add widgets to the page as you want that come from other places. So looking to the first one, free-form HTML. Typically, this is never a good solution. It can give a lot of flexibility, but it can give a lot of problems as well. Like it's very hard to do something with a WYSIWYG to create a page like that, make sure that it's consistent, make sure that you don't have any errors. So it's very probably if you allow them to create this page with free-form HTML, you're gonna get a support call very soon. Other problem is about the way that you structure information. So as everything is just one blob of text, then it's very hard to maintain the consistency, and it's very hard to reuse content. So if I want to say, show me how many recipes I have that uses peppers in some other page, it's very hard because everything is in the blobs of text, so I cannot do anything with that. So we go to the second option. The second option is you create a recipe node, and you put everything that you need on the recipe node as part of the field of that recipe. So you say ingredients are one field, and images are another field, and videos are another field. But then it becomes very hard to say, how can I have this flexibility of putting first the images and then the videos, and then what if they want to change it somehow? So there's different ways of implementing these that I've seen in the past. One option is to create a compound field, so you create your own custom field using Field API, and then you can have different fields that you add to the page, saying, I want to have one field that is a compound field that says how much of this ingredient I need to have, and where's the ingredient. It can be like 5 tomatoes or 10 apples or something like that. And that's a lot of work. Other option is you use models that kind of do that for you. So field collection is one of them. I don't know if anyone used this strategy with field collection before. Anyone? Yeah. So you basically say, well, I have these field collections, and then field collections can be just groups of fields, and then I can have several of them. So I can have one for ingredients, and another one for maps, another one for images, another one for videos, and then I can add all of them to my node. And then I can choose what I want, and they appear by order. And there's another model. I don't know if you guys know this one, paragraphs. It's quite interesting. It kind of does the same thing as field collection in a more usable way. So basically, oh, I have a picture here. That's what it does. So in your nodes, you can add different paragraphs, and you can create different paragraph types. Each paragraph is an entity type. And then you can have, let's say, text, or images, or videos, and then you can just add them as you want. And you can style them as you want as well. You can say, I want to have a paragraph which is going to have a text and an image, and the image is going to appear on the right side, on the right part, or there's going to be a large splash image that is going to appear on the top. And you just fill this, the different nodes and the different parts of the fields, and it just appears. Third option is you reference content. So you create your recipe, and then everything comes from other entities. So you can say the ingredients come from other entities, or the map or the images can come from other entities. So there's different ways of doing this, and this is usually interesting if you need to have the entity that you are referring also needs to exist as another entity. And there's a couple of models that allow you to do this, like inline entity form. I don't know if anyone knows it. It's part of the commerce suite. So you can add products, and you will be adding new entities on the fly directly on the node. And then you have extra models like reference dialog, as well. Anyone does this? It's a very interesting model. It just allows you to, whenever you are using entity reference, you click on search or you click on edit, and then you can search using a decent view. You can search about the node that you want to embed. And then you have other models that allow you to do the back reference. So if you say, well, if my node needs to refer something, I also need to refer back to use a view, for instance, and you can use that. So this is a good example. So imagine that you are adding a football match. And football match has a away team and a home team, and then you have all the players that play in that game. So this one, for instance, allows you to search for the team, and you can click there, and you can go to the database and use the view to search for a team, while this one allows you to directly edit these rosters, and each roster is an entity as well. So I can say, well, the goalkeeper, tell me how many matches he played this year. Okay? So that's the first problem, content. So after you have solved your content problem, and you need to think about all these properties that you need to solve. Second thing is you start looking to how do you style it. And again, here you have three options. Either you go with the template system, and you create different templates in Drupal, and then you somehow pick them. Either use something like Display Suite, which is kind of the template system plus on steroids, or use something like panels or panelizer. So option A, the template system. You basically prepare different Drupal templates, and they are selected depending on something. So you say, well, I have this template, and I pick this one if the content type is X, or this one if the content type is Y. Or I can say, I have this paragraph, and the paragraph is type A or type B, and then I pick one of them. And then what you do is you use the display mode and the template suggestions to pick the correct template. You can even say, I have a field somewhere in my entity that defines what's the layout, or it's called a template, and then you can pick a list of what you have, and then use that field to pick the correct one. And you can be very creative and create systems that allow you to preview that based on what you are selecting. Because at that point, all the information about what is the template that you are going to use belongs to the entity, so it's very easy to preview it. You can just show it. Second option, use something like Display Suite, which just facilitates this process of creating a build mode. So you create this build mode, and you can drop fields to different regions of the build mode, of the template of the build mode that you're using, and you can define what are the formatters for the different fields. And this is very good if you want to maintain a consistent way of showing an entity. So you imagine if you want to say, I have teaser with a big image, and that's a display mode. And I have teaser with a small image, or teaser with a slideshow. And all of those are kind of widgets that you define with your style team, and they are approved, and that's the way it's going to look like. And that's the way that's going to be available for content editors to pick what is going to appear. And this is, for the ones that do not know, this is Display Suite. So you are editing your entity, and then you can define what's the current layout. You can define new templates. You can define for which template is going to appear, and then you can have in your template you have as any other template in Drupal. You could have regions, and you can define what fields appear on those regions. Okay, so it's kind of powerful, but still it's a bit cumbersome to use for content editors sometimes. Then you have panels. And panels basically it's a way of creating layouts in Drupal. So you can create these layouts, and you can allow panels to use custom layouts or use something that is already defined, and you can just drag and drop widgets in these pages. And it fits very well with when you have a client that wants to have this collection of widgets and you want to add them to the page. That's a very good solution for that. Nevertheless, there's a problem. So how do you create pages with panels? Just one way? No, there's 4 ways at least. So you can either say, I want to create a panel page, and that's just a panel that does not belong to anything, and the content is not really there, it's just a display, just a panel display. Or you can say, well, I want to style the nodes or any other entity with a panel, and then I can use variants. So I can say, I have different panels and different panel variants, and they apply depending on your content type or depending if your user is logged in or logged out. And it's very interesting to create variants of the same layout. But again, it's just a display, it's not connected with content. You have panel nodes, which is basically a content type that is connected with a panel, and is very limited because you can only create that type of content type. Or you have Panelizer. Anyone use Panelizer? Good. So I really like Panelizer. So in Panelizer, the idea of Panelizer is basically you have a display, so it's a panel, and that's associated with an entity. In this case, it's actually associated with an entity revision. So each revision of an entity has an associated panel display. And that panel display, it's just the display of it. And then you can integrate the fields of the entity inside your display. Or you can add other types of widgets to your display. It has a very sleek interface with panels IP, and you can try it in Panoply or Lightning. Anyone knows Panoply? Yeah? Anyone knows Lightning? Kind of? Okay. Lightning is an interesting one. It's a starter kit for Drupal. It's done by us, by Acquia, and integrates very well this idea of Panoply, of all the panel stuff, and the way that it integrates with the workflow. It's a very good way of starting your projects. Also, it comes from Demo Framework. I don't know if you guys know Demo Framework. Demo Framework is a distribution in Drupal, also by Acquia, that you can use to show the best of Drupal to your clients. So if you want to sell Drupal, if you want to create a prototype and say, well, you have a new client and you want to show what Drupal can do, it's a lot of work to install the models and make sure that everything is working. So if you download Demo Framework, it's just something that works out of the box. And it works with Panelizer, and it works with workflow, and it works with commerce, and there's different flavors that you can show. So it's very interesting if you want to sell Drupal to clients. And together with this idea of Panelizer, then you have the idea of CTools content types. So CTools content types are kind of widgets, they are called panes, that you can add to your panels. An interesting thing about CTools content types is that they have configuration associated per instance. So for instance, if you create a block, that block has a global configuration. So whenever you configure it, that's it. It doesn't matter where you add it to the page. You can make it smart, but the configuration is pretty much global. While the CTools content type, they have configuration per instance. So anytime that you deploy a CTools content type somewhere, like in a panel or in a page, you can configure it. You can say, well, I have this block or this view that receives configuration that depends from page to page. So I can say, I can show the same block, the same CTools content type. I can add it to different pages and can have different context and can have different number of items and can have different look and feel. So it's very powerful. If you start thinking about it, it means that you have finally this library of widgets that you can add to the pages and configure it afterwards. And then there's plenty of models that take advantage of this property, or that do very well with CTools content type. So one of them is fieldable panel panes. Has anyone used it before? Fieldable panel panes is interesting. It's a type of entity that just exists on the way that you add it to the page. So you create this entity, and if you look to Panoply, there's 5 or 6 implementations of these fieldable panel panes. So if you want to create like a spotlight is an interesting one. Like you want to add a slideshow to Drupal. How do you do the slideshow? And typically, sometimes these spotlights just exist on the context of the page. You just create a spotlight to add it to the page. So doing it as a node sometimes might not have any sense, because you know that you'll never have it outside of that page. So you can just create it and edit it directly. The same thing with the simple map, for instance. Like you just want to add a map to the page, and that map has properties. The properties are typically the location and the zoom and stuff like that. And you don't need to have that as a node to use it. So you can just use fieldable panel panes, which is an entity and works very well and integrates very well with panels. And then you have panels in place editor, which is basically a new interface for panels that allow editors to go direct to the panel, click edit, and then just magically start touching the configuration and drag and drop stuff. So one of the main complaints that people have about panels is that it's very hard to use. If you want to put a content editor using panels, like the default panels behavior, it's very hard. There's a lot of things there. In-place editor solves that. It's very sleek and it's very easy. And then you have things like Panoply Magic, which is a model that comes from Panoply, which allows you, whenever you are adding one of these CTools content types to your page, you can automatically preview it, and as you type, it changes what you show. So it's very interesting. And if you want to explore this idea of T2 content type, Panoply comes with a lot of widgets, so it's very interesting. So this is basically the interface that I was talking about in Place Editor. So you start with a page, just say the title right now, and I can click customize, and I can add widgets. And then I have a list of widgets that I can add. And all of those that you see on the left are the ones that come from Panoply widgets. So text, maps, and tables, and videos, and spotlights, and stuff like that. And you can add your own. You can create your own, and it's very easy to do this. And then, whenever you click there, then you have configuration afterwards, and you can add blocks or views or whatever. So it's very interesting. And I really like this approach, and I see more and more distributions and more clients using it. So I think this is one of the ways that you have to solve or break the old mantra of you create the content first and then you change you need to see it somewhere afterwards. The layout is different. No, like you can just in place and edit everything, and everything is part of the same behavior. Okay, so other problem that you have. So we solve content, we solve layout. Now another one is, how do we review this? How do we do the workflow on this? How do I make sure that whenever I create content and whenever I change the layout, someone can approve it or someone can schedule it, so that in the future we can have that page being published before someone broke something and does it directly in production. So content workflow in Drupal is kind of easy, right? So as long as you structure your raw content, and as long as you have thought about the content from the beginning, from day one, then it's kind of easy. Like you have workbench moderation, or you have workflow, or you have revisioning. There's plenty of models that are quite stable and work very well to do content moderation. And then you can add your different roles, so you can have people that are authors and people that are editors or approvers, and they approve the content after it's published. And you have relationships with schedule models, so you can schedule your revisions to appear in the future after being approved, and it's very powerful. Layout workflow, by the way, is kind of hard. So if you want to change the way that certain nodes are going to appear, it's quite hard. As long as you are not doing it from the properties of the node, it's quite hard. So if you want to do workflow and preview, and you want to have content and layout together, so it's easier to achieve when content exists as a unit. So coming back to my previous example of the recipe. So if everything on the recipe belongs to that node as a field, then it's much easier to just workflow all of it and say this is published. Because everything belongs to the same entity. The entity passed by the workflow and got approved, and field API just takes care of the rest. So everything belongs to the entity. All the information that you need is part of the field API tables, and that is connected with the revision. So it's very easy. If you start using entity reference, then you start having problems, because the entity reference is just a reference by the needs. So you say, there's this node that refers the other nodes. So whenever I change this node, it becomes a new revision, but the other one, if I change the directory, then it's going to affect the original one. So as everything is just connected by the principal entity ID, then it becomes very hard. So if you want to have workflow, then probably easier if we think about everything as an entity and as fields of that entity. The other thing interesting when you want to have workflow and you want to have layout and content together is that if you look to Panelizer, then Panelizer kind of solves this very well. You say every revision has a different display. So whenever I change something in the new revision, then the display is different, so I don't affect the older one. So it's kind of easier to do it with things like Panelizer than it is to do things that are much more unconnected or disconnected. The other thing that you also need to think about when you think about review is the responsive part. So it's very uncommon these days that you build a site that is not responsive. And content editors sometimes don't think about it. So create this big text. And this text looks amazing in desktop, but if I want to preview it in a mobile, then it's crap. It's impossible to read. It just breaks all the divs that I had, all the space that I thought about it. It just breaks everything. So having something like responsive preview is quite interesting. The responsive preview also came from Spark. I don't know, does anyone know Spark? Spark was a project with some years now that the main goal was to solve the content authoring problem in Drupal. And then a lot of things from Spark ended up being in Drupal 8, and some others became just contrib model. So just a quick, in Drupal 8, you can just mouse over fields and you can edit directly. That came from Spark, for instance, and responsive preview came from Spark, the navigation bar came from Spark. So there's a bunch of things that came from there. So when you think about workflow of these complex pages, there are typically two ways that you can go. First way is you do it directly in production. So same site, and you depend on the revision system. So all your entities have 3 revisions, and they can go through a workflow. And if something is kind of powerful, as long as you think about all the details, and if you think about how do you integrate that with all the items that you need. But sometimes it's a bit limited. So if you want to do revisions of menus, or if you want to start revisioning taxonomy, and if you want to change sections as a whole, it's quite hard to do it. But most of the times you don't need to do that anyway. So most of the times you can survive, and the easiest way to solve this is just saying you are on the same site, and you do the workflow in the same site, and that's it. There's another way, which is more complicated, but is also possible, and there are clients in the world that use this approach, which is saying, I have the site in different environments, so I almost have like a content production environment or a pre-production environment where my editors go there and they do the changes, and then they click a button, and by magic that gets populated into the production site. So after they see everything and after that they are happy with all the changes, then as a package that gets deployed to production. So this is quite hard to achieve. There are people in the world doing this, and if you look to talks in DrupalCamp, you'll see clients doing this, but it's quite hard, and you need to have people in your team that know how does it work and how does deploy work and how can you detect all the changes that you have done, because that's the hard part. Like you have to change in the menu, the taxonomy, the nodes, the views. How do you detect all that and you have to ship all that to production? And you don't want to do it as just database thing, because typically that does not work. So when you look to directly in production, then you are looking to things like quick edit and panels in place editor and contextual links, and then workbench or workflow. And you can also look to things like site preview system. Does anyone know site preview system? So site preview system is a model. You can check it in Drupal or by SPS. It's a model that was sponsored by Large Scale Drupal, which is a program that we have joining the major clients in Drupal. And what it does is connects several sites, several models together in order to create this approach of I want to have a stage on my site. So I'm doing a change on my site, and I'm doing a new edition of my site, and then everything gets together and everything gets revision, and you can check, let me see what's the Sunday edition, or let me see what's the Monday edition, and when you are happy with it, schedule it or approve it. When you are looking in different environments, then you are looking to more things like deploy and all the associated suite. And deploy does a very good job on detecting what are your dependencies. So if I change this node, then what is attached with this node? There is terms, there is images, there are users, so there's a lot of things that you need also to ship to production whenever you do a change in one of the items. A couple of final words. First, to almost like non-tech words. So content editors, even if people do not think about them, are typically one of the most important stakeholders of the project. When you leave and when architects leave and when engineers leave and even when maintenance leaves, they are the ones that are using the site every day. Like they are the ones using the CMS every day. They are the ones creating content every day. Ultimately, they are the ones in 2 or 3 years that are going to say, your system sucks because it does not allow me to do what I want. And they are the ones that are going to replace it with something else. So making them happy and making them aware of what is happening in the background is very, very important. They basically care about what they see and do not care about how it works. So you can say, well, that's not possible to do because Drupal has limitation A or limitation B. You always need to think about how is it going to be used and what's common sense in order to change Drupal in a way that you can please them. So sometimes it's very easy. Sometimes it's just a question of putting a button in the right location, putting an edit button in the right location, making sure that you show methods explaining what's happening in the background. And that helps a lot because that helps explaining what is happening and helps them understanding when there is an error, they know exactly what they can give you in terms of support. And the other part that is very important is sometimes you receive these magical requirements documents that no one knows very well who compiled them, it's very important to have people from the discovery phase. So when you start thinking about a solution, it's very important to have some editing involved. Very important to say, look, that's the way that I'm thinking about doing this, and this is the way that it's going to work, and I can prototype that. And does that solve your problem? And is that something that is a big improvement from what you currently have? And typically it is. And if it is, then they are happy from the beginning. They know how it's going to work, and when they go for the last phase, which is UAT, or whenever they go even to production, they know exactly what is possible and what's not possible. And also they shape the requirements much better than if they wouldn't be involved since the beginning. Then the final word in terms of tech. So success in this problem typically means the ability to preview correctly. So you need to be able to preview things how they are going to appear in production when they are editing them. The ability to edit in place. So if they need to go to several locations and need to think about what's the relationships that you have between all that content and all that layout, it's quite hard. So if you are all the steps that you can do to speed up that process, and all the process that you can do to make sure that it's easy to understand and easy to memorize and easy to use, basically, it's better. You need to be thinking always about review. And review and workflow is always this buzzword. Like most times you go to a client and they always want to have X steps of review and many people approving it, and then you start asking about how many people do you have to do that work, and you understand, well, not many. The team is very small. So also try to simplify as much as possible your problem at the beginning. So if you see that there's easy ways of doing that, and if you could do it without breaking anything, if you simplify some of the requirements, then try to do it as much as possible. And think about the edge cases all the time. Because they don't think about them. Like, they can think, well, it would be nice if this could be approved, and then put it on a hold, and then replace it, and when the other one gets published on a Monday night, when something gets unpublished, that's what was published in Sunday, that is now unpublished, needs to be published again. All of this is very complex. So try to think about these edge cases when they start posing them to you. And these are my last words. So open for any questions.
Do you discard, what is the process that you follow in the discovery phase to decide which suite of modules you are going to use? So whether you are going to use display suite or finalizer with panels?
Yeah, so the discovery phase usually finish the requirement document, so you know exactly what your requirements, and there's the phase where you close that, and typically involves an estimation. So what the client wants to know in the discovery phase is, I have all these ideas, and I want to close them as requirements, so this is what we're going to sign up for, and how much that is going to cost. So when you start thinking about how much that's going to cost, then you need to know what's the solution that's going to use. And because doing it in panels, there's a cost. Doing it in display suite, there's a cost. And there's limitations as well. So I think you always need to know pretty much all your solution during the discovery phase. Even if sometimes we don't give the solution to the client. Sometimes we just give, that's the price. And there are several options still open to use it. But on your mind, as an architect, you know exactly, you kind of draw the discovery first to go to one place where you feel that the solution makes total sense, and you know what is the solution going to be at that point.
And do you end up implementing often the whole thing in panels, or more often in display suite?
Well, most of the projects I've been involved in the last years, panels is the choice. But also, I think it really depends on my clients. Like someone that goes with Acquia typically is a client that wants a lot of flexibility. And if you look to the brands that we have, it's clients that want to use the CMS in a very powerful way. If I would be building smaller sites that I know that the editing part is not that important, and I want to be faster on creating the display more than giving them the flexibility, then display suite is also a very good option. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
You said that moving content with layout structure is a complex thing in Barcelona, I guess. What are the chances for to be easier in Drupal 8?
Well, one of the things to avoid is that it starts the revisioning system is better. So in theory, it's easier to do the workflow of different entities, and now the space of panels in Drupal 8 is still very very open. So it's very hard to say what is going to be easier or harder. I think the fact that you have properties in your core that allows you to have revisioning in everything, then it becomes much easier. And all this idea of I want to provide site review system is a very hard thing to implement in yourself, because you need to do revisioning on a bunch of things, from blocks to menus to taxonomy terms to nodes. And it doesn't matter the layout that actually that. Just doing the workflow of the content is very hard. Doing it in Drupal 8 is going to be much easier. So you can say, I just have all these revisions, and somehow the whole revisions have a property, and that property might be my collection, might be this is a Sunday collection, this is what is going to be launched on Sunday. And then they have different associated displays. In theory, also the layout part of Drupal 8 is easier to change, and you have all this notion of you can create different layouts in core. So I think panels is going to leverage that. So it's probably going to be easier as well. Also, we learned a lot about. If you look to the evolution of panels and panoply, it's quite amazing what happened in the last 2-3 years. So in Drupal 8, we're going to learn from all that, and the final solution is probably going to be even easier. Yep.
One. You mentioned the deploy mode. Have you tried to use the deploy mode to deploy layouts?
To this why?
Deploy layouts attached to content.
Yeah, we have a couple of clients that use that for layouts.
Oh, it works.
Yeah, there's patches for Panelizer that work with the cloud. So if you look to, there's a couple of interesting talks from DrupalCamp and DrupalCamps. Pfizer and MDB, for instance, they have global talks about that, and they tell exactly what they do. And most of the times it's about not only the content but also the layout. But all the Panelizer and also all the panels part is sometimes you need to be living off of dev versions, and you need to be with patches as well, because everything is very very new, sometimes very green. More? Oh, let's go home.